with the best father and son team on the internet. It's time for Homie and the Dude.
What's poppin', party people? This is Homie and the Dude, the TTRPG and MMA podcast, and we are delighted to be joined today with Matt from Roleplay Chat, a TTRPG advice podcast. Matt, we enjoyed our conversation with you just a little while ago, and we thought it would be great to have. Yeah, exactly, dude. It was nice. And we admire fantastic skill, and we're really tickled to have you on our podcast just to kind of dig into what you do really well.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks. Go for it. Yeah, sorry, Bodhi. Go for it.
No, that was Bodhi was looking at me like, how long are you going to go on for, dude?
That was a good one. That was one of your better ones.
Oh,
wow. No, dude, one, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And two, you know, we're in the world of TTRPG, and that's great. Like, we love TTRPGs, but something that we're in a world of together that we don't get to talk about very often, and that Tom and I talk about between ourselves very often, is podcasting. And like, in a sense, interviewing people and having, you know, conversations with people. And we have found over the 2 years that we've done this that, I mean, if you watch our first podcast, it is awful. It's hard to bear. You know, we're very linear. We had like notes that were like questions written out in like spreadsheet form, but on paper. And it was just all kinds of a mess. And in that time, we've become a lot more relaxed. We, you know, do our research, and then we kind of go about doing our thing. And we've learned a butt ton. I want to ask you, one, where was the place that you started? How did you start with the whole podcasting thing? What inspired you to sit and talk to people like we do, you know, about the things that they enjoy or things that, you know, they want to talk about? And two, what is your like main thing that you've learned in the time that you've done this? What's the biggest, like, as a podcast, what would be like maybe advice that you could give earlier you that would like jump you as close to where you are now, basically?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, I guess I have to also say thank you for having me, because I had a blast talking to you two a week ago now. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing that conversation. It almost feels like we haven't stopped, you know, like picking right back up where we left off.
Right back up.
But yeah, no, I mean, again, thank you. So your first part of the question was what inspired me, right, to start doing this? Yeah. So, I mean, Roleplay Chat also started kind of bumpy. You know, it was me and my buddy Chris. And after every single time we would play a role-playing game, every single time, we would end up spending almost as much time after the game was done talking about what worked and what didn't work. You know, like, oh, when this scene happened, could you imagine, like, what if I was thinking of maybe doing this? Like, what would have happened? Speculation, or even just like very abstract philosophical things about table dynamics and like whether or not certain players, you know, whether we felt like we were jiving together, stuff like that. You know, we kind of, no topic was off limits in these post-game conversations. And after doing that for about a year, I told Chris, I'm like, you know, maybe other people would want to hear this. Other people might want to chime in, say their 2 cents, but also to hear kind of this ramblings about tabletop role-playing games. So the show originally started as just me and Chris. We didn't have guests on the show. We were just me and Chris. We'd take deep dives on topics that we thought were relevant. And as, you know, creative content creators get in this space, you often find yourself in a place where you want to collaborate and cross-pollinate. So we did a little bit of that, and we got to have some wonderful folks join the show, share their insights. And then life happened, and Chris had to stop. And I wasn't ready to give up Roleplay Chat. I was like, no, this is just the beginning of our story. This is maybe about a year and a half in. This is just the beginning of Roleplay Chat. You know, I want to see where it goes. And seeing all of the wonderful people on Twitter all of the people that create content, that have their own shows, have their streams, actual plays, writers, mini painters. It's such a diverse hobby, and there's so many specialties that people can have. I found myself wanting to have them join me and continue those conversations, still staying to the topic of, tabletop RPG advice. But I found that the show, just the lid blew off of it when I got to have people like yourselves join me, because the perspectives that other people bring, me and Chris, after a while, we're just kind of the same two dudes talking about the same things, and having new perspectives injected into that really made the show grow. So that's kind of how the show goes, how the inspiration, where it came from. And I think the second part of your question was about what I would tell myself if I started a long time, like if I could go back in time, or for anybody out there who wants to do this kind of thing. I would say shoot your shot more often than not. I think, like there's no shame in reaching out to people in the space. There's no shame in sending an email, even if you've just started your creative content endeavor, because you never know what those people are going to say. They might join you. They might want to team up with you. They might want to work with you. So I think more than anything else, just shoot your shot. Find people. If the DMs are open, send them a DM. Introduce yourself. Be polite, of course. Don't be spammy, but take an opportunity to say hello. Tell them what your show or your content is about, and see if they want to work with you. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had some of the guests that I had on my show, because, and I would have never imagined having the opportunity to speak to some of these people, yourselves included. You guys are far away. It's nice to be able to connect with somebody across the world and have conversation. So that's my advice. Shoot your shot, reach out to people.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, you got fucking Simon and Garfunkel, it sounds like. Sounds like Chris left you hanging, but no, that's the. I apologize, Chris. I love you. I'm sure it was a much more life-oriented thing.
Yeah, it was. He slowly transitioned off the show, and then it got to a point where he told me, like, Matt, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm like, it's okay, man. I kind of saw I saw it come in. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
It is what it is. And then,
because there were episodes where he wasn't even talking anymore, and you were just talking to him, and he wouldn't even answer. And you just kept talking, and he was like, I mean, it's a hint, but like,
I mean, there was like 10 shows where you couldn't even hear me. It was just me and a guest, and Chris was, no, I'm just.
So that's the first one I was going to say. Second thing I was going to say is, I love the way that you got started. Something you mentioned was like these post session conversations, and I feel like that's such an under talked about part of like the TTRPG world. I can't tell you how much almost my favorite part of D&D sessions, and because we do like a lot of our sessions are either in person or they're semi in person and semi online, and if that I have at least half of my table always sat in front of me, and the rest of them are in America, so they're on the internet. And there's something about like when we take our break, going down, having like a cigarette and just talking shit about what just happened and being like, holy shit, did you think about this? And oh, this opens this up, and speculation about this. And oh yeah, this person really isn't in it today because, they're struggling with this. And exactly what you talked about, the social dynamics, the game dynamics, the ideas, the plot, the like meta plots that you don't mean to have, but you start creating.
And if I'm being honest, the best feeling is when you get praised, right? Am I right? Where it's like that the players telling the game master, being like, man, that was a really, like when you did that. And I'm like, oh yeah, keep telling me positive things.
There's definitely some good moments to absorb. I definitely appreciate that as well. And I think like normally with everyone around, like, especially in person, I think a lot of people struggle to not be, I don't know, maybe hiding behind a camera. Oh, I'm questioning my own theory now. But my thought is this, like, often I feel like some players at my tables, like I've run groups for like other groups of friends and work colleagues and things like that. And there's times where I'm like, you're just telling me it's good because, you know, you want to get out of my flat quickly and you have other things on your mind, kind of thing. And other times I find that there's people who talk it really straight to me. And I know, like with you, at least, when we talk about a session afterwards, like I'm like, yo, give it to me straight. Was I suck in here? Like, what was going on? And we always talk about it a little bit more honestly. And I often actually find, like I always say to Tom and like my players and stuff, especially my actual play cast, I always say, like, tell me shit that I'm messing up on. Like, don't tell me the good stuff, because don't get me wrong, it feels good for like, you know, a month, but it feels good for a while. But it's also, you know, the whole like, I don't learn anything from that. Like, I'm not progressing. When you tell me that I did a really good monologue here, like, that's great, cool, thank you. I worked hard on that monologue, but what was something that I didn't do great, so that next time I can get better at it.
Well, can I give you a bit of a counter on
also,
that?
I would like you to at some point address the take your shot, because I think that's you need to answer that, or like respond to that at least, because that's your wheelhouse and it's something I know you really believe in as well. So we've got to come back to that.
Yeah. So to your point, I think the concept of getting good feedback on what really worked, what has been a good moment, can be accepted in different ways. So you can accept it and be like, thanks, but there's also an element of, can I analyze this and actually really understand what I did in that moment? So I just talked to you about, we're just reviewing one of the episodes that we shot it a couple sessions ago. And I was like, Bodhi, that's the best 15 minutes that you've ever done. And there's just good pacing in it, and you just feel like your improvisation is very smooth and flowing and in character and motive, all of these things. Well, one way to receive that is to just get in there and be like, okay, let me just look at this. What the hell am I doing? What did I do leading up to that? Like, that was a moment that I really did well.
It's a good point. Positive analysis as well as critical analysis as well.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about how, because this is a team game, even if you're doing it alone, like not doing it is fine if you don't want to do it. Yeah. Doing it alone is a step up because you're getting that insight, but then doing it actively with the people that you just played the game with is even better, right? Because it's not just you, and you guys have a cool dynamic where you guys get to have that kind of back and forth about the game because you've played it together. You're really kind of showing two perspectives. Right. You can have that critical thought from the game master seat, from the player's seat, kind of like seeing each other's perspective, I think helps as far as improving the game and trying to get better, because it's not just the game master who has to do that. And it's not just the player. But sorry, I interrupted you, Tom. Keep
No, you're totally right. It's a solid point. Well made.
Yeah. Total like build on what I was saying. No, the shoot your shot thing, dude, to me is, you know, it's I mean,
fucking Tom is the master at this, dude. Ever since I've been a little kid, I have ended up in so many weird situations because you have gone and asked someone if this can happen or like that can go down, like constantly.
Yeah. No, I think the shoot your shot thing is great. I think it's there's a couple things about it. So I think there's an element of contextualizing that, which is shoot your shot, but know if you shoot too far or too high, that, you know, the chances aren't as great that you're going to hit your mark. So just keep that in mind and know that it's possibly a numbers game. So if you're going to shoot that high.
How many times did you reach out to Jules? How many times did you reach out to Jules? Legit.
Jaws is Aaron Jaws Homoki, who is he's just a legend in the skateboarding world. He's like, if there was a Hall of Fame, he'd have his place in the Hall of Fame.
Oh man!
Along with, you know, Tony Hawk and Rodney Mullen and all these guys. And yeah, it went on for months. It went on for months. You know, we got, you know, it was almost like fishing. And he gave us a little bite, a little bit of a reply on Instagram that was sort of neutral, non-committal, and that dance went on for a long time until finally the timing was right. And he was like, "Let's do it." We jumped on and we had a great podcast with him. So what I would say with the shoot your shot thing is, just know what you're getting into. You know,
good point.
Yeah, and also be prepared to know that it's a numbers game, and that at some point, sometime, you're going to shoot a shot that's going to be just the right time for someone. Their schedule's going to be open for whatever reason they want to talk about something, and you seem like a good option for them. And just know that that doesn't come very often. And if you're missing, I would say just keep going and know that at some point, if you shoot enough shots, you're going to hit a mark.
Can I just build on that as well? And I think that segment right there, what both of you have said combined, I think is two things. One, it's perfect for podcasting, for any sort of guest show, anything. I was about to say for anything, literally applies to anything. You're talking about dating, you're talking about getting a job, you're talking about, learning a skill, you're talking about anything in life. As long as you keep going at it, as long as you know that it's a numbers game and you're going to fail, and failure can be anything from rejection to hurting oneself to, struggling with this, blah, 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 whatever it might be, you're going to fail infinite amount of times, but all of that is going to lead you to that perfect success moment where you hit the nail on the head, the timing, the skill, the progression, the learning, they all converge into one perfect eclipse of magic, and suddenly you're able to just, claim that moment for yourself. And it's crazy how many times, like I said, and Tom and Tracy, my mum, always taught me from like a young age, it was always, you don't know if you don't ask. That was like exactly the line that was told to me as a little kid is, hey, always ask. You don't know if you don't ask. And that has worked for me thousands of times. I've seen it work for you guys more. Obviously, you've lived like 100 times my lifetime. So I've seen it work a bunch more. But it's just one of those ones. I can't stress enough how much and that works. I'm sure there's examples.
If I can add to that,
please,
really, real quick, and then I do have a couple examples that. But I want to say, to add to what Tom was saying, it's a numbers game. It's a timing thing. And you can stack it in your favor, sort of, to prevent that crushing feeling if it doesn't work out. If you've just started out, your audience is small. What worked for me was saying so. When I reached out to people who I thought I was, going above my weight class or whatever, I'd say so. I'd say, look, I'm doing this in my basement as a passion project, but I would love to talk to you. I would love to have your opinions on a topic that I think my audience would appreciate. And sometimes I'd get ghosted. Sometimes I'd get people who'd answer me and say, hey, not right now. Like, thanks for reaching out. Hang tight. And then I'd get people that would say yes. Like one individual who gave me a yes kind of out of nowhere was Seth Skorkowski. Seth is a really big YouTuber who does a lot of Call of Cthulhu stuff and like that kind of grimdark stuff. I reached out to him on Twitter DMs. He instantly answered me back and was like, let's go. Let's make it happen. And I was like, dude, okay, let's go. And we recorded a conversation for almost 2 hours. And then he stuck around for another like 2. And we just shot the shit on Discord. It was a really good time. So anyway, shoot your shot and be yourself. Be honest about what you're doing. Say, hey, I'm a small YouTuber. I'm a small podcaster. I'm grateful to talk to you, but if not, like, no stress, man. Like, door's still open for another time if you want to. And just kind of do it. Try. It doesn't hurt to try. Yeah.
And do you know what as well? I would even say something with the shot within a shot, which is something that we like to do. And this is sneaky homie and the dude advice for anyone who's podcasting. And this is actually, we built our entire podcast framework around this. Like, legitimately, this is how we've built our podcast framework. And what we do is we find an industry or like a topic or like a creative area that we want to discuss. So early days, we did everything. And then eventually we narrowed down to TTRPG. And what we would do is we would choose someone within that industry, usually smaller, knowing who is in their circle, whose circles they run within, and being like, okay, look, we would love to talk to you. If you're happy to talk to us, that would be a pleasure. Like, again, same thing as you. Go in honestly, genuinely, just be yourselves. And we would go and we'd get that person on. And then the trick is, after the podcast, you say, who do you think would be a good guest on our show? Who's someone within your like things, people that you like that you think would be on? And almost like, I would say 70% of the time, the names that we were hoping for would arise. And like the other 30% of the time, we would get other names that have led us other places and have like spread the web even farther. And especially with TTRPG, legitimately TTRPG, every guest we've had has been a recommendation of someone else. And that is how we've gotten people like on.
The great Jess Pendley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Keith. This conversation probably wouldn't be happening without them, to be honest.
Hey, shout out Underground Oracle Publisher.
Hell yeah.
But you know, it's a sneaky one, and it works. It's weird how well it works, and it's something that, you know, and it's never been a case that we've come across a next guest being like shitty ever.
No,
like,
that's the other thing. Like, you know, you start almost qualifying not just the guest, the topic that the guest is an expert in or has like interest in. You also start qualifying the type of person, because if you have one person that's a certain type, and they get to know us, then there's a really good chance that they're going to recommend someone that is, you know, similar. We have very few podcasts where we've had someone that's been difficult. We've had some podcasts where people have been a little bit
weird ones.
We've had some awkward podcasts. We've had some podcasts where people are, you know, uncomfortable talking, and it might be one of the first or one of the very few podcasts that's ever been on. So I get that. But as far as being nice, I mean, across the board, we've never had an asshole on our podcast, have we?
No. So, we've had self-centered people.
We've had some people that, well, this is another thing. Here's another topic.
What are you guys saying about me? What are you guys trying to say here?
Yeah, so on that point, like, for us, so our dynamic is different than yours. You have a two-person dance, right? You're playing tennis with someone on our podcast, right? Over to you, over to me, over to you. We have a bit of a different dynamic. So we have to manage our balance along with the guest's balance, and making sure that, like if there is a quiet guest, we have to somehow do a little bit more song and dance, or a little bit more invitation of them to keep it going. If they're a little bit too talkative, we then have to kind of take a little bit more of the wheel at times as well.
How would you say, like, your two-person, like, what are the nuances of your two-person dance? You know, like we know the three-person dance that we tangle with, but what's it like? Like, what are some skills that you're like really honing in on when you're doing that two-person dance?
Yeah, well, I mean, it might have to do with my personality. I tend to like to be over-prepared for everything. But a strategy that I've had a lot of success with is come prepared with topics of conversation that you think that the person that you're talking to is going to want to talk about. And, you know, get them ready, get them set up, make sure that they know what they're getting themselves into. You know, when you guys joined me, I sent you like probably a 2,000 word Twitter message about what to expect.
Our session 0 was a little less formal, wasn't it?
But, you know, I try to front load it so that people kind of have an expectation. And then I have yet to have somebody on the show, you know, maybe they were a little bit nervous. Maybe it was their first time having this kind of conversation about their game or their design process or what have you. But if you talk to somebody about something that they're passionate about, they're not going to have you're never going to find yourself with nothing to say. You know, if it's something they care about, and people in this space tend to be creative, people in this space tend to be very passionate about what they do. So you just ask them, about their project, you ask them about their creative process, you ask them about their inspiration, and boom, like you've got a gold mine. And I just sit back, and most of the time I talk like 10% of the episode because I'm asking questions that I've kind of researched. I kind of get to know the topic at hand and the people that are coming to talk to me. And so there's that. But then there's also reading the room. You can't say you got it all written and scripted, because that's not going to work. You're going to find yourself trying to bring something up that they don't want to talk about if you do that. So you kind of have to, you know, you ask a few broad questions at the beginning. You get a sense of the things that they want to talk about. And based on their enthusiasm and their response, you can kind of start saying, okay, like let's go down this path and see where it takes us. Okay, that maybe wasn't as interesting, or you didn't have as much to say about that as I had originally thought. Let's try to bring it back on track to our central theme, and then branch out again. And that's kind of that's where I've had a lot of success.
Thanks for watching this episode. We really appreciate you supporting Homie and the Dude.
Please hit us with the Holy Trinity, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Just search @Homie and the Dude. It all really helps. Do you know what I like? It's nice hearing it from someone else for once. Because Tom and I talk about this whole process a lot, and it's just a weird one because we haven't been on many other people's podcasts. We've had a lot of people come on who are like DMs or, you know, like creators and things. It's been rare that we've gone on other people's podcasts or spoken to other podcasters, and it's just nice and refreshing. Can I ask you like one final, like, I guess we'll kind of round out the podcasty bit of this with I have a question for you. How much do you find this helps you with like real life interaction? Like I find that now, like my ability to listen and like, and I find it most useful. I'm not. This is going to be like a weird way to put it, but when I am uncomfortable or not enjoying myself talking to someone, is when I can like whip out my podcasting skills and I can like navigate that territory really good. Like I'm like I really like on nights where I'm like I'm drained and I don't want to be talking to people, but I'm here talking to people. I'm just suddenly podcast mode-y, and I'm like, that's you work for the ministry? Oh, that's super awesome. So like, tell me a little bit about your day-to-day life.
Tell me about your creative process.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, exactly. Let's go into this a little bit more. And so it's very much one of those. Do you find that it's helped you on your end, outside of podcasting?
Yeah, certainly. It certainly has. If you told me 5 years ago that I would spend every other Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever talking to somebody I'd never met before for several hours at a time, I would probably tell me that, you know, I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, you're crazy, Matt. Like that's not going to happen. It's definitely gotten me out of my shell, but I've always kind of been social, I guess. One thing I will say, I kind of, I'll start by saying, yes, I agree with you, Bodhi. It's certainly helped, but an unexpected byproduct of it is that I now have a lot less patience to talk about things that I don't care about, because I know now I've connected to this community of people who are so genuine, so kind, so much to say that I want to know. I'm interested in. But somebody starts talking to me about something that doesn't fancy me, doesn't interest me, I have a much harder time staying invested in that conversation, because I'm like, I could just go talk to somebody online about something that we both care about and we're both passionate about. And here I can tell that this person is talking to me about something and they're obviously passionate about it, but I'm having a hard time like plugging into it. If that makes sense. I don't know. I don't want to come across as an asshole. That's not what I want.
No, not at all. Like
this fucking here's this jabroni, this guy.
Bloody Hamook, we gotta here maybe let me try building on it a little bit. So I think what I'm hearing is, and this is how I'll give you an example, because we just went out on, was it Friday night? And we went out for dinner with some people that we hadn't met, but they're friends of friends, and we were invested in really sort of at least interacting in a way. And what I would say is that for me, it doesn't have to be in my core interests, but I'm exploring things that people are passionate about. Yeah. And if they're passionate about it, then I'm happy to talk about it. So for instance, I was sitting next to someone and they were a school teacher of 16 to 18-year-olds. Now, I have a certain reference point, but I was really interested. And this is not something like that I'm reading about or like I even care about in any other time except that moment, of like the perspective of like teaching 16 to 18-year-olds right now, because it's a whole different world. It's a whole different experience that age group is going through. And I was kind of fascinated by it. And then the conversation went on to diving. I've never dived with a tank. But it was interesting. Like, we're talking about different types of diving and different places to dive and what's happening with coral reefs burning out. And
is it I've never dived or I've never dove?
I've never doved.
Is it dove?
I don't know. It's
I think it's dove. I think
I've never doved. Okay.
I don't know.
I never dove. Yeah.
Is it dove or is it dived?
I think it might be both.
Because you can
divin.
Oh, dude, fuck English. Right. Sorry about that.
No, so yeah, but I guess the point is though that like, and this is like, I think I may have referenced this to you because I know it's been one of my life like golden rules. And what I would say to anyone that's feeling anxious about new social situations, some people are like, oh fuck, I need to take like a Xanax or something because I'm going into a cocktail party and I don't know anyone there. Dude, my like secret weapon in those situations?
Liquor. Oh, wait, sorry. I didn't. Sorry, I didn't. Oh, sorry, I was just.
It certainly helps.
Along with that is a good one. No, my secret weapon is
He actually doesn't drink much at all.
I think people mostly, and I'm I don't want to at all try to get into someone else's the reasons that they're feeling anxious or that type of thing. But I think a lot of the reasons why I have in the past is because I start thinking about, oh man, I don't want to be like, I don't want to feel I'm in a situation where I'm talking to someone about something that I'm a little bit vulnerable about, or I just don't want to talk about, or whatever. So my strategy in those situations to take the anxiety away from me is to just ask questions, and then slowly like offer up some self-disclosure about myself, and all of that anxiety goes away. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to a stranger at a bus stop.
It's weird how easy that works as well.
It is such
you told that to me when I was young, and I've used that a lot throughout my life, and it makes my shit easier as well.
Yeah, it's funny too, because you're right, Tom. I can't remember where or who said this, but geeks have more in common with other geeks, regardless of what it is they are geeks about, than somebody who is not a geek, because you can understand that borderline obsession with something. So even if you're going to come and talk to me about making soap, if you are passionate about that, if you are a geek about making soap, I can get that. And like you're saying, ask questions. I want to hear about what you have to say, because I can tell that deep down you care about this. That's it. That was my interjection. But a lot of great folks in this community have a lot to say, and it's fun to listen to them for sure.
I fully agree with that, and I think it's for me, some of the weirdest shit that I know is because I've asked. So, like I met a guy who uses like a scythe to cut corn, and he goes to like Scythecom or some shit where they scythe, they have scything competitions and stuff, and I was like, what is this world that I don't even know about? Like, this is crazy. I'm like, so yeah, I literally spent, I think, like 20, 30 minutes just grilling him about scythes. And I was like, do different like lengths matter? I was like, do you need to have like another hand? Like, I'm like, break this shit down for me, man. Like, what's your technique? Like, all of it, you know?
One of my characters has a scythe. Or Sith. Is it a Sith?
No, that's a
that's a different that's a different canon.
That's a whole nother type of nerd right there. Dude, so obviously, you do role-playing advice and you do role-playing chat, and interestingly, like the social aspect of what we're talking about, I would say really applies to role-play and things like that. Like, in my opinion, advice as a DM, because I don't know why I find myself doing this, but I'm constantly DMing for new players. Like, it's rare that I get a bunch of veterans. Like, my only veterans at this point are my actual play group, and like we have some good vets in that group. And with new players, I have advice that I just spill to them because I feel like it's important to give them a little bit of like a launching point. And one of the big ones I do
often they tend to be very receptive of it, right? They don't know what's going on. They want to hear what you have to say, for sure.
Exactly. And I think, one of the big ones I say is like, we call it the assist card, and like in any sport, you throw up assists and you're like, hey, what do you think? You know what, you're good at that. Why don't you, and passing that ball. And something I say to like a new table of players is like, if everybody's passing the ball, then at some point everyone's going to have a superhero moment, because you're all setting each other up for superhero moments where you feel like a god, like a legend, in these moments. And so I feel like that whole question and deep listening stuff that we do in podcasting, I feel like you're amazing at it as a player. And I feel like Blake, one of our other really players, is insane at deep listening. He remembers things from like 5 sessions ago that like was a small comment, and like brings it back around. I'm not sure whether he's got amazing notes or whether he just locks that in and it just means something to him, but I don't like his ability to do that as well. Have you felt that kind of like elevate since you started podcasting? Have you felt your role play and that aspect of what you do elevate?
Yeah, certainly. And I want to echo what you're saying, Bodhi. I have kind of two game master styles almost. New players, because I also have a lot of new players. I love how many people want to get into this hobby. I love it to death because it means the hobby is growing. So there's that side of me, and then like you're saying, there's the table of people who I've been playing with for like 10 years now, probably like close to 10 years now, and it's been the same group with some people leaving and going on like traveling for work and then coming back and cycling around. And that table is the table where all of the really intense stuff comes out. That's where all of the like the deep analytics and the improvement and all of that, like that's where most of that stuff comes. And that's where I can see a lot of my growth is because I get to dissect these topics with people, and because people challenge they're not directly challenging my perspective, but they're presenting a perspective to me that sometimes I disagree with or I would have never considered in the first place. And by presenting those things to me and finding myself in the hot seat where one of my strategies for when I'm interviewing people is to never disagree with the person that I'm interviewing, unless of course they're saying something that probably would make it such that the episode doesn't air in the first place. But but if they say something, I always want to come back to what they have to say in a positive way. There's something they said that I agree with, and I want to like tell them that I appreciate that I agree with that, and run with it. So by having that very constructive approach, it challenges me to find something good in things that maybe I would have never considered, or things that I didn't agree with in the first place. And then I find myself later on telling myself, oh, I really should run a dungeon delve. You know, like I'm a very narrative game master. I should run a dungeon delve. I've never done one. I wonder how I would do that. Or I've never had a TPK. I'm not going to plan a TPK, but maybe I should be a little less forgiving with my players. Maybe I should have a combat where I never fudge a single die, and I just let it happen, and we see if people die. So things like this where I would have never really considered doing, I have, and it's turned out I shot my shot, and it turned out okay, and I grew because of it in my games, if that makes sense.
That's, first of all, one, super interesting, your style of podcasting in like the mirroring of the positivity and things like that. We are like not the opposite of that, but we are definitely like, if we disagree with something, we like outright just call people out on some of the shit. Like on our podcast, we outright disagree with people at times, and I don't know.
It's a fine line. Like,
yeah, you got to dance it for sure.
You can't be so provocative that you're offending that person. Yeah, so you have to have a certain like soft touch towards presenting an alternative point of view.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like it's tricky because we're not in the higher echelons of podcasting.
Neither am I.
Yeah, but I guess when I look at those podcasts, I think they have a really good skill of expressing their opinion. They're not just facilitators of conversation.
Yeah.
So that's why people listen to them over and over and over again, irrespective of what guests they have. It's because of what they bring to the table consistently. So that's a really fine dance, because you want to have a good experience with, and you want to accentuate your guest. You want your guest to come across as everything that they hoped to come across as a guest. But you also want to be able to, I think, kind of make your own mark as well. Not force it, but like this is sort of my, and I guess I'm doing it right now in a meta kind of way.
Yeah, very meta.
Yeah, but I think it is important for us to, I don't know why, just to also be able to.
I think it's just because we're assholes.
I
think we're a bunch of assholes.
A bunch of fucking jabronis.
But I
think you're right, and that is like a core principle, but doesn't mean that I don't deviate from it, right? If someone's going to say something, I'm going to find something that I like. I'm going to say that I like that. I'm going to say, but I don't know how I feel about that. I would have preferred this approach or that approach, but let's not dwell on the fact that we disagree on something. Let's dive deeper into the reason that we agree. And sometimes my guest will say like, well, no, let's have at it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And if I get their permission, I'm cool. But I never want to challenge people on the show. Anyway, I feel like we've talked about this. Let's keep going. What?
Well, do you know what? I definitely want to circle back to something that you just said, and you just like said it so speaking casually. I can't even believe how casually.
Oh, I know what you
said
said. I
that.
picked it up
I
too.
can't believe how
I
casually
picked
you
it
said
up too.
this. So you mentioned.
Let me write it down before you say it.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Go for it. See if we're thinking the same thing. Okay, let's see.
Okay, go ahead and say it, then I'm gonna fucking
Show it. Okay. So I caught it when you mentioned during combat the possibility of fudging dice rolls.
Oh, baby,
Is that what you said?
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's talk about this.
Dice fudging.
Dice fudge. You probably can't see it, but it's there.
What I want to talk about is two things, because you mentioned your DM style, and I feel like I very much at this point have like thought about what my DM style is and kind of, begun to form, iterations of other DMs within my style, but also very much, trying to find my own unique, path kind of thing. I want to ask you, one, what would you say is like your DM style? Are you like, and that can be a very multifaceted question, that can be anything from, I like combat more than I like exploration and roleplay, or it could be, within roleplay, I'm much more comedy based. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a very big question, but just some general ideas of how you are as a DM. And then let's talk about fudging dice rolls, because I think this is such a beautiful topic that is so. And dude, I know for a fact people are going to hate me when I start talking about this. So let's definitely dive into that. I think it's a very fun and dangerous topic for DMs to discuss.
It's hot. It's a hot topic to talk about.
Yeah. So talk about your DM style first. Share a little bit about
You thought you could sneak that in though, didn't you? Go and tell us.
I was trying. I've been trying to plant some seeds to see if you guys wanted to talk about those things. And fudging dice, let's go. Let's have at it.
Did not slide.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, my style. I'll be brief because I want to talk about fudging dice more. And good catch. You know what? I did say that kind of in passing, but anyway, my style: narrative focused, story focused. My players are cool. They want to have a good time. They want to win. That's win in quotes. Let's not talk about that. Let's not also talk about that, because that's a whole loaded. I shouldn't have said that. Let's just say
let me write this down real quick.
They want to be heroes of their story. Let's say that.
Nice.
So that's the style that I tend to play. Of course, I like it's an interesting thing because I like to also have an air of seriousness. Like, I want the people at my table to take the game that we're playing seriously. I want them to be invested in the world that they're in. I want them to be invested in their character, and in return, I'm going to enable them to do the things that they want. That's kind of how I see myself. That's how I see my role as the game master. You pay into the world and into your character. I'm going to make sure that pay-in has payoff. That's my job. So that's my style. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
totally. Dude, definitely. And I think,
I love a lot of that.
I was going to say in parallels, like I feel like probably very similar style. I'm very much like, I realized recently I had a couple of players that were dicking around in one of my games, and I realized very early on, I was like, I don't like this. I was like, I very much want people to take this, like, my world is filled with comedy, just like real life is, but I also want you to appreciate that there's moments where, someone's dad has died, and you shouldn't be like cracking jokes in that moment, you know what I mean? And you should be feeling, like you said, reading the room and feeling the vibe of what's going on. And so,
can I just ask you, what's your definition of dicking around? Because it could be like,
my definition of dicking around is, like, I actually don't mind like people doing stupid stuff, like in terms of being like, oh, I want to climb on him and I want to like try and grab this, or whatever. Like, I don't care. You can mess around with like conceptual ideas all that you want. The thing that bothers me is when people either break character to crack jokes, or in the same moment in character crack jokes in a moment that really doesn't deserve it, or bring down a very fun moment. Unless it applies, bringing it back down is another thing that I'm not a big fan of either, because I've had players that have been disgruntled because they feel like they're maybe not getting the limelight in this moment, as we're as other people have split off from the group and are doing something, and we're cutting back and forth between scenes, and those people then have a negative attitude, and that's something, as a DM that I've got to manage, but it's something that does happen. And so I think
it breaks immersion, doesn't it? It really breaks immersion, and that's sometimes hard to foster. It's
Yeah,
hard to bring
fully
it back to.
Yeah, fully. What were you? Sorry, continue what you were saying.
Yeah, well, no, I was just going to say it when we're trying so hard to have the players at your table be immersed in the world that you're presenting to them, immersed in this scenario that you're presenting to them, whether it be funny, whether it be sad, whether it be horrifying. If somebody jumps out of the skin of their character to say something that doesn't match the tone of what you're going for, it kind of ruins it for everybody, doesn't it? So
steals a moment or a memory from the group. Do you know what I mean? Like you're totally right. It just rips something from the group.
You know, that's such a good point. A big part of my D&D experience is built on my catalog of memories, of moments, right? And we have just almost, it's a finite amount of moments in my playing because I haven't played for a long period of time. But that is a real big, it's a real big reason why I play, is to seek out those, not to force them, but to make myself available and make the table available to something magical happening. And that can be another one that you can put in your shelf for further, 6 months down the road when you're having a drink with someone. It's for whatever reason it comes around to that. It's super cool. And that is the big thing, isn't it?
Right. And this is a perfect way to segue to fudging dice.
Go on.
This is how I'm going to do this. You ready for this?
All right.
One of my legendary segues. Here we go. For me, fudging dice is something that I do more rarely, than fudging HP. But I will say that I have, in fact, in my life, fudged dice. I'm not going to say what tables, what sessions, what games, anything. I want my players to be ambiguous to it. But the reason I fudge dice, and I think this is something that, Matt, I would love for you to build on, is for moments of story, for moments of awesome, there's times where, if you inform a team that a creature is on low health, or you're like, oh, they're badly wounded, they're struggling to stand up, kind of thing. And a player who maybe doesn't always do the most, say, you have a bard who is not the most melee combat heavy. If they're like, I suddenly draw my rapier and I go and I'm going to try and finish this thing and have a hero. For me, those are the moments where I'm like, okay, I'm a nice person. I love living vicariously through you. So let's live this together and have a good time and pretend that the AC was lower, or pretend that, the HP was, you rolled 6 damage and I actually had 8 HP, but it's close enough. So we'll call it a kill. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something where I definitely, and again, if I'm being beasted, if I put my players into a situation with someone that should be at least handling most of this group, and they start beasting me, I'm like, okay, I need a little bit more HP right now. I'm gonna go into the old HP bank and pull out an extra loan of HP right now because. But
so you're
go for it.
You're massaging.
Because you didn't know about this either until recently, until me and Tony talked about it, and it was
you broke the veil, Bodhi. You broke the veil.
Yeah,
exactly.
The veil has been broken. Yeah, but I think what you guys are saying, and it'll be interesting to get your point of view, Matt, is that you use that as a possible tool to feather or massage the story in a way so that it has more of an opportunity to experience those magical moments.
Yeah,
for either a person or a group in general. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
for me,
so I have a few things to say about dice fudging. And I think the first thing I'm going to say is that everybody has opinions about dice fudging, because I don't think that everybody is on the same page about what dice fudging is. Bodhi, you just, for instance, talked about HP fudging or AC fudging. To me, all of that is dice fudging. It's all rule fudging, I guess, is probably a more comprehensive term. But to kind of build on what you're saying, Tom, 100%. The dice, I don't consider myself to be beholden to what my dice tell me when I am a game master. When I'm a player, dice is law. I'm never gonna change or say or quote unquote cheat. To me, that's cheating if the player doesn't do what the dice say. But as a game master, because of the responsibility I have to the people that I'm playing with And again, to remind folks listening, that responsibility is make sure that the people at the table are having fun and that their story is being told. I'm going to sometimes consider my dice as inspiration. So I'm going to roll, see what the outcome is, and see if I agree with that outcome. And if I don't agree with that outcome because I think there's a bigger payoff if I do that outcome in like 3 turns from now, or if I pump up the damage right now because I want them to feel the tense combat and I want them to feel the pressure, I'm going to pump it up. I'm going to pump it up, pump it down. I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that the story beat, the dramatic beat makes sense. It's the episode's nearing an end, or not the episode, the session is nearing an end. I want there to be like this really impressive climax. Maybe one of the enemies hits a nearly critical blow on a player. And then we'll see if they live next game. You know what I mean? Like having those moments are things that I think as a game master we're allowed to do. Obviously, people are going to come at me. It's at Roleplay Chat. I want to hear you come at me. I'm challenging you. Let's go. Let's duel. But yeah, it's I think it's our job. I think it's my job to do that.
And
quick question.
It's nearly always at the detriment of us as well. Like,
I was just gonna
go for it.
No, it's true though. In your estimation, if we could just do a
percentage,
a little bit,
you filthy bastard,
little straw poll,
you filthy bastard.
In your estimation, in the circles that you chat in, out of 100%.
I thought you were gonna ask.
No.
Okay,
I'm talking about in the circles you chat in of DMs or GMs. What percentage of DMs and GMs do you feel, or even outside that circle, just in your knowledge of the game and broadly, are fudging to some extent to enhance the experience of the table? Because I know we gotta just say there has to be a percentage that are absolute like mechanics lawyers, and they're just like, there's no fucking way I would ever, if you fuck up, you fuck up. If I fuck up, I fuck up. That's just what's gonna happen.
I think there are people on that end of the spectrum for sure, just as there are people who play diceless role-playing games like they're but I would say it's probably pretty close to 50-50. I think there's a lot of people that love the rules of the game as written and want to make sure that they are the arbiter of those rules, and that's fine. I'm not here telling you not to do that, but I think that there are definitely instances where rolling dice and changing what those results are would benefit the people at your table. And I'm not saying all the time, I'm not saying every time you roll, but one circumstance that I often like to bring forward, and we talked about it briefly, is new players. What if you have new players? They've never played a tabletop role-playing game before in their entire life. If you put them in a situation where they are extremely unlucky and they lose, like they get their character killed. Sorry, I keep saying winning and losing. I don't know why I'm saying that. They have unlucky rolls. They miss their hits. They never connect with an enemy, and their character gets killed. Do you think that they're going to come back to a role-playing game? Like I'm not sure. If they spend 4 hours feeling defeated, they're not going to enjoy themselves, or they might never come back to a role-playing game again. So to me, I think it's my responsibility as the person introducing them to this to kind of let them experience the highs as well as the lows. And that's where the dice fudging comes in.
I fully agree. I would disagree on the percentage though. So I'm gonna say I think it's a much higher percentage. I would say, because if we're talking regularly fudging rolls or regularly fudging rules, I would say you're looking, in my opinion, probably at like 70-30. Maybe like 70 are fudging rules, 30 aren't. But if we're saying has that person ever in their DM career? Shit, I would say 90%. Like shit, I would legit say like it feels like, and this is the one thing that I would say, the only person who I can outright say from just like watching them and the way that they are as a DM.
And outcomes based on what they're rolling.
And outcomes based on the rolling. I would say I would speculate that Brendan Lee Mulligan might be one of the few that I have ever watched that I'm like, I'm looking for like facial tics and things that, you know, like I know as a DM when I've like rolled something and I've like critted a player and we're like in a hard combat and they're like, they've already got 2 people down, the healer's down. I'm like, and you know, like I will like look at it and be like, shit, you know, kind of thing. And I'll give myself like, and I've caught myself watching the episodes back, be like, and then like, you know, say, oh, you know, it was a 15. Does a 15 hit? No. Oh, you know,
shucks.
yeah. And I've caught myself like doing it, but I've never like caught a tell, I think, of his in the many seasons that I've watched. So I would speculate that he's one of the few that I've watched. I'm not sure about Matt Mercer. I feel like he's pretty close to glove. I feel like people like a Brian Iyengar, you know, Dave B. Walders, you know, like all these people, I feel like they're pretty legit as well. But dude, it's so hard because there's so many high moments in some podcasts.
Exactly.
There's so many like moments where the person, you know, one person, you know, puts a knee out, the next person like puts their back out, the last person's got their hands ready, and someone runs up all of them and lands the crit hit and kills the monster. And you're like, in what world does everybody roll good in this moment? Do all the dice, the percentage chances of that happening are very low. So I would say that I think it's a higher percentage, but I fully agree with everything that Matt said. It's all about, like, dude, as a DM, I do get some joy in putting up a fight against you in combat. I do. I really do get some joy from that. But I get so much more joy when it has been a hard-fought combat and at the end you guys get to slay whatever it was. You know, you guys get to, you know, put a exclamation point at the end of that bad boy and you know, feel good about that moment. And I think for me, I live for that even more than I would live for a TPK. Like I've never no, that's a lie. No, I've TPK'd you guys once. I've won TPK. But like otherwise I've killed 2 players outside of that TPK. And I really like, I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel good.
I'm going to give you guys an analogy, and Matt, this one might be for you as you're a young father to really contemplate, because it's coming down the road. It's probably, to some degree, it's happening a little bit right now anyway. But further and further down the road, you're going to experience it, because I've experienced it and Bodhi's experienced it. And we've talked about it plenty, which is when we play sports, like one-on-one in basketball, is it more valuable to that person to feel the joy?
Guess which one Tom is at the end of this as well.
To feel the joy of winning a tight game, when at some point they may or may not realize that you had a little bit of an additional impetus in them winning the game and experiencing that. Or alternatively, is it more rewarding to them to know that you're trying your hardest all the time, and that if when they beat you, they know they've actually beaten you. They know they've actually gotten the pure win. So now take that to D&D.
That's a really
I
good
don't think
point.
DMs talk about fudging. That's why I don't think we talk about fudging.
And I think, Tom, you bring up an extremely valid point. And I can appreciate that perspective, because players want to feel like they deserve the wins that they get. And I think that as a game master, fudging dice doesn't need to affect that, I don't think. And I know that's the like gut reaction, right? It's like, oh my God, you're lying on some of your die rolls. How can I ever trust anything you're ever doing? But that's, I don't think that that's necessarily the right reaction. I think the reaction should be, trust me as your game master to make sure that the story still gets told in the best and most enjoyable way. One example of dice fudging that I like to use to illustrate this is, let's say you're fighting the big boss. You're fighting the big boss and there's minions. And one of the minions happens to like crit against the healer in the back, and the healer is the arch nemesis of the big bad. But one of the minions rolls incredibly well, and for some reason deals what should be the ending blow, the finishing blow to the healer who has a narrative reason to be invested in this fight. That would suck. I would never allow that minion to be the person to kill that character. But what I would do is I realized that the minion did that, I would keep that in my back pocket. And then because I fudged the dice down to the benefit of my players, I would let the big bad kill that character instead. No matter what, like even if the big bad rolled a natural 1, I'm like, no. I didn't kill them then so that I can kill them now. And this moment has so much more narrative payoff because of that. I'm oversimplifying a lot of things to illustrate this example, but I think that this is an instance where changing the die rolls to benefit the story and to benefit the narrative have a much better outcome, because nobody wants to be killed by a minion. Nobody wants to have a character taken out of the fight too early when they didn't get to say what they needed to say to the bad guy who maybe did something to their family and now they're here to avenge them or whatever. You know, you want to give them the opportunity to have the spotlight. But at the same time, you want the death to feel important and for the death to feel like it has dramatic, like, you know, it's like an Oscar moment. Let them die with an Oscar moment. So that's an instance where fudging dice still, you know, it doesn't alter the risk that this character is experiencing. It doesn't alter the outcomes, but it's still fudging the dice. So I would just like people listening to consider that when game masters say they fudge dice, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're letting you have wins that you don't deserve. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're taking away moments from your characters. I like to picture it as we're making you get even better, cooler moments, whether they be to your benefit or not.
Fully agree with that. And it's why earlier when I said, you know, you go to the bank and you get some HP and you take out a HP loan, it's because what do you do with a loan? You got to pay that shit back at some point. And that's just how it is. It's exactly how it is. You're 100% right in the, like, I will, you know, minimize this. And then at some point I'm going to hit you like real hard. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's one of those things, again, in a weird way, like, we're the directors and you're the like actors to like a Hollywood blockbuster that we're like living together. And don't get me wrong, the dice are a big part of that, but at the end of the day, you know, it's our job to not just hit you with highs. Like, I think that's a big one that I think I also want people to appreciate is I've also, as the big bad, like, this is another thing, I have as the big bad, or like, as in my world, there's actually like 4 or 5 big bads. They, you know, I've used them before to do things to, you know, like, for example, they've you know, murdered a favorite NPC or like an NPC of the group in that moment. And I'm not going to roll for that. I'm not going to roll a single die in that moment. I'm like, there's no point in me rolling might to hit versus, you know, Kato's AC, and I'm going to like do that goofy shit. I'm going to just go for it, and I'm going to play this moment of seriousness. Even when, you know, you kill a character, I think, if anything, it's one of the biggest moments in a DM's job is that moment when you kill a character is like ridiculous. And it can happen in multiple ways. And each way as a DM, it's your job to make sure that the justice is there for that player. Like, even if a rock falls from a mountain that they accidentally just like use thunder wave or like shatter against and they kill themselves with a giant rock, that moment, that death moment has to still be like that player has to come away feeling like, cool, like I got closure from that moment, and now I'm going to make a new character that will come into the story, you know, and I can go from there. And I think for me that feels like such a vital moment that yes, your DM might be fudging moments for you guys to win, but there's also chances that we need to hit the lows just as much as we need to hit those highs, or else you don't have a dynamic story. No one, you know, there's a reason why Lord of the Rings, you know, you love the Battle of Helm's Deep, because it's like the last stand of these guys. Not like they just about win. This castle is destroyed. Rohan is completely overrun. That is one of the lowest moments for like the armies of men in Middle Earth. You know, at this moment, that ends with like one of the most epic highs, like of the entire trilogy. And you're like, you have to hit both of those. We have to hit both of those for this to make sense. And I think a big way as well that I would speculate, Matt, that I know I do this, is I give you a big high, but I also give you consequences to your guys. In some cases, either brash or unthought out actions, like going into the new big city and killing 2 guards in the first hour that you're there. Now you're wanted. Now this causes problems for the fact that you now need to do some illegal shit in the city, and there's eyes on you everywhere. And so I'll reward you by having an epic moment where you save the girl that's being attacked by 2 guards, and you like beat up these guards, and that's awesome. But then 3 episodes later, when you're trying to do a heist, it's a lot fucking. They've doubled down the guards now. They know that shit's going on. They know something's happening in their city. They've got posters of you up. People are asking you questions, speculating. There's whispers now. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's another way to do that, like, balancing. And it's a balancing act.
I really like that you talk about balancing, because I think that's something that people have to remember. When we talk about fudging dice, a lot of the time, especially when you're running your own content as a game master, you don't have the liberty of playtesting the balance of what you're presenting to your players. So 100%. Just because I'm fudging the dice doesn't mean that I'm pulling my punches. It just means that maybe I didn't realize that the power that I'm giving this character or this enemy is your kryptonite. And like, I didn't want it to be your kryptonite. I wanted it to be a nuisance. So for me to be able to massage that into what I had envisioned the fight being, or the power being, or that enemy's role in this fight being, I need, and we keep talking about combat, even in social situations, like I had this spell that I maybe homebrewed, and now the spell turns out to be completely broken. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're not going to cast it now. Maybe the skill check that you need to do to like the save against it, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus because I didn't anticipate it having such devastating effects on you as a party. So I think that's an important part to mention here. I don't want people listening, and Tom, I can kind of see it in your face where you're like, yeah, but I want my wins to be my wins. And I don't know how to convince you that they still are, other than to say to trust Bodhi. Trust your game master, that they're there to be the arbiters of this game, but still to be fair referees. They're not going to break the game in your favor or against you. If you trust your game master, all will be well. And you can still feel like your feelings are not misplaced when you say that this is my win and you deserve it, because you do. You still deserve it. Our job is to make sure that you kind of, what you're feeling is right, and it feels right, and it doesn't feel bad when something bad happens, or the opposite.
I agree with everything that you guys are saying. I might just have like my sitting fucking
your resting bitch face.
Resting bitch face right now. but here, let me turn this a little bit differently. What if I suggested that not the players, but the DMs themselves are missing out? Now, I am agreeing with you guys that for most of the time, this is the best philosophy to take as a DM.
Yeah.
But one of the sort of the negative byproducts of that is you don't get to experience that moment where 2 crits in a row happen by 2 players. And I mean, you do, but there are moments that legitimately can unfold in a way that no one expected, that through the roll of the dice have created a situation that is fucking epic.
Okay.
Right. So that I guess that can happen anyway. But what I'm saying is, like,
it's about balance again. It's from the DM. It needs to come from a balance point. Like, for example, in the battle that we had, and this is up on our actual play podcast. In the battle that we had they were on an airship, and a pirate airship in the middle of the night came upside them and like linked onto their ship basically, and like started boarding basically. We have a battle, and the captain of the enemy ship is a pixie, and our half orc is like, cool, I'm gonna try and grab him and grapple him, and I'm gonna try and load him into one of the ballistas and shoot him off of our ship, and like just fire him. But we rolled 2 grapple checks, And both times I rolled, and we rolled the exact same number both times. So I allowed that to be a moment where it was like, holy shit, crazy. But also in that same battle, when I hit you guys with damage, there was once or twice where I upped that damage to make it feel like, okay, this is like we're actually like we're dealing with a threat right now. Like this is no like fuck around, like second battle of our campaign. We're going to get through this easy peasy, you know? And so, you know, the outcome of one of those was your character went down. You got knocked unconscious.
And by the way, it was one of the more epic moments for me personally. In our campaign thus far.
And I think it comes back to a DM is constantly balancing fun with serious, comedy with emotions. You know, combat with role play, exploration. You know, it's constantly this like I'm trying to like do the scales the right way so that you guys are enjoying it. And I think but I hear you as well. Like this is the other thing. I also hear what you're saying, because there's a big part of me that wants to just trust the dice, that wants to just be like, cool, if we're going to do combat, we're going to do combat and I'm going to just kill you guys. But something I think Sam said, and Matt, I'm sure, you know, as someone who works within the industry, you might agree with this, but something that Sam said to us recently, we had one of our players was leaving to go traveling, to go around Africa, and we had to get his character out of this plot. We had to like remove his character because he's not going to be back by the time we finish this plot. And so me and him began scheming and like planning this moment where he betrays the party. And this is actually happening in the episode coming out this week. And he betrays the party, and it's, you know, this big like moment where he has been like spying on the group, and it's like a big issue basically. And, you know, I think keeping in mind that it was important for us to know what's going to happen, but I railroaded the group into that moment a little bit. Like I was like, cool, we're moving. Do you know what I mean? To make sure within the session, the last session that he had, that we had the moment for betrayal and we had this happen, and everything, you know, that needed to happen in that session happened. So I banged the drum a little bit harder for you guys. I was like, cool, is anyone else got anything they need to do here? No, I'll assume we're moving on then, you know, kind of thing, and like that kind of thing, and just, you know, forcing along. But Sam wisely said, he was like, look, dude, it's different when you're doing an actual play versus, you know, when you're in a home game. You know, because when you're doing an actual play, you're telling a story not just for the players, but you're telling it for the audience as well. And the audience has to enjoy the plot just as much as the players are enjoying the plot. So, you know, moments of, you know, you're giving us bait to something, we will attempt to take it, because obviously if you're giving us bait for it, then it's something that, you know, you have wanted to put in this stream. So we're going to take that bait. Do you know what I mean? And I think, you know, moments for actual plays, I think there's moments where fudging and that kind of stuff can be a lot more realistic, because you're trying to tell a story for people, not just your players but your audience. I think a home game, I'd be much cooler like fucking just killing you guys if in a home game where I've got no like weight on my weight. Like, do you know what would be fun? An actual play where we stipulate that, where it's like, look, I'm gonna fucking go in on you guys, and let's see how long you survive. This is a survival TTRPG.
You know,
that would be kind of interesting.
You guys are saying things that are making me think, and I'm gonna say an opinion onto the internet, so it's unformulated, but it's really fascinating to hear what you guys are saying, because Tom, I'm getting the impression that you would prefer your game master never fudge dice for you, and.
Not necessarily, but I'll let you continue your point. But I'm just exploring the real true height of a magical moment, the purity, the essence of a magical moment from the players and the DM's perspective. And we're hitting those moments. Maybe we're hitting 8s, 8.5s, 9s, but are we getting any 10s? Like that magical 10. Yeah, that's what I'm just wondering.
Well, so I mean. And you know what, maybe you're onto something with that, but where I was going with this was that I think maybe as a game master, I'm going to pin this on me as an insight for myself even. Perhaps I need to take better care of understanding each player individually as opposed to my table. And when I say player, when we talk about actual play podcasts, I think we need to consider the audience that we're putting our show out for as well. If the player at your table, and I'm thinking of one of my friends. He's one of my closest friends. He's the kind of person that can disconnect from the game, and his immersion can be broken if he fails too many times. If he tries really hard to make something happen, and I make him roll to see whether or not he succeeds, I'm making him roll because there is a possibility that he fails. But if he fails something that he's invested in too many times, he's gonna unattach himself. He's gonna like unintentionally ruin the immersion for himself, and the rest of the game is gonna be bad for him. So maybe I ought to roll fudge dice a little bit more for him, but not for the player at my table who perhaps, Tom, I'm going to like superimpose you into somebody else. Perhaps there's somebody who really wants to see what the dice dictate and let that be what happens. So perhaps it becomes a matter of not only assessing your table, but weighing each player at your table individually. And that's not something I've ever done. I've always
it's a great shout.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe I'll test it out. We'll see what happens.
Let me just
that's a great shout. That's a wild thought, and it comes back to balance again.
Yeah,
it comes back to balance again, because without knowing your players, and there will be, unless you have a bunch of Toms or you have a bunch of like, you know, people who get upset when they fail, you're going to have a mixture of the two, and you're going to have to then, as a DM, consider one more thing in the back of your head while you're playing, which, you know, as a DM, I don't want to do. But also, I also understand what you're saying, Matt, that if we're trying to be the best DM that we can be, which I think we all are, you know, that's a fucking good point. It's a fucking good point.
Well, let me just say this. So, so that's going on at a DM GM level. On a player level, there's been multiple instances where I feel like, okay, combat is coming around, initiative is coming around to my turn. I know what I'm going to do. It's going to be a good one, right? I feel like it's going to be, you know, this is the thing that's going to turn it around right now. It comes to my turn, I do it, I roll the dice, and it's happened where I'm just like, it didn't hit. And it could have been that moment for me, and it didn't hit. So the calibration can be a little bit like, where do you draw the line, right? Because if you're trying to find the mini moments for people, as opposed to the maxi moments for people, as opposed to the maxi moments for the group, you know, it's a tough equation. It's a tough equation, and I don't at all like, you know, if you're a DM and if you're a quality DM that can really manage that, I really admire that, because you've got a lot of plates and a lot of considerations along the way. Where, you know, if you're a player, well, you're just rolling and you're hoping that you can be part of creating something that's going to evolve. But the DM has a bigger oversight of all of it. So it's a really interesting question. I can tell why it's, you know, a hot button for a lot of people. And what we may end up doing is like carving this out and having it as a DM's fudge, just a little bit that we'll throw up there. And
DM's fudge, just fudge for DMs. Do you know what I would actually say, Tom? Just to that, it's another balancing act.
Yeah,
it's just another balancing act, because at the end of the day, you know, you said, sorry, just I lost my train of thought. Recount what the.
Well, I was just saying that I've had moments where I have not.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. The answer to that is, as a DM, it's about balance between my roles and your roles.
Yeah.
So it's about knowing, cool, like when I ask for a certain check, why am I asking you for that check? Other than just, you know, it's beyond the bounds of passive, or it's beyond, you know, the bounds of, you know, a situation that doesn't have two possible outcomes. Do you know what I mean? But also, like, for example, like I've seen DMs where I've been in a game where we've had a giant creature, and I'm like a nimble badass, and I'm like, cool, I want to climb up on here, then I'm going to climb on his arm, and then I want to climb up on his back, and then I'm going to like go to do my attack. As a GM, you get a decision here. Do you make them roll a check for every portion of that? So do you make them roll a check for getting onto the barrel, climbing onto the arm, getting onto the head, before they then make their attack? So you're asking for 4 rolls? Or do you ask them to make 1 roll with a higher percentage chance of that going well, more closer to, you know, 50-50 than before, all the way through to, you know, going, cool, 1 check to get up, and then we're going to like describe it, you getting up. It doesn't matter how many stage it is because you acrobatically got there. And then we're going to do your attack roll, and we're going to 2, or are we going to go with 4? And I think that's another balancing act, because it can also be things like in a conversation with an NPC in a social situation, if we take it out of combat, and you know, for example, you're trying to persuade or lie to someone. It's just as much me rolling to see if I believe you as it is you rolling to see how good you're lying to me. And I think that is where, like, there'll be times where I'll be like, make a deception check, you guys will make it, and times where I'll make that a contest and I'll roll my insight against it. Other times I will let that be a deception check against a DC, and if you beat it, then I'll go that. Or even in a third instance, I'll let you, like, you'll say something, I'll make you roll for it, and then I'll come back round to making it a contest, you know, in a couple of minutes, because, you know, you've given me a 19 deception, and the role play from there is, you know, you've started talking absolute shit, and I'm starting as a DM to not believe you. So I'm going to make them roll, because as you continue to talk, even though you rolled a 19, we're 2 minutes later and you're talking shit right now. So I'm going to see whether I believe you at this point. And so I think it's about getting that a balance again between who's making the rolls, because if it's behind my screen, if it's in my hands, I can dictate a lot more. Where the more opportunity I give you to fail, the more likely you are to fail. That's just how it is.
You guys both talked about things that I want to try to dissect a little bit, but I'm going to focus on what you said, Tom, first. You talked about how the player is trying to add to this world. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but you mentioned that, and you're rolling, and sometimes the roles that you get dictate these things. But I think the player's role is more than what players think. A lot of the times, some of the things that a player will say will, even without a role, even just in passing, depending on the game master and the table, but in my table, those things sometimes really matter. Sometimes you say something, you bring up a theory about what's going on in the politics of this world, or what's going on in a drama between two characters. And I might be like, I hadn't thought of that, but I love it. I love it. And I'm going to find a way to inject that in so that you and your character feel a win. And also because I think it's fucking cool that like, you know, like you just said something that's way cooler than what I could have come up with. And this isn't fudging dice because I'm not rolling any dice, but it's certainly fudging the narrative that we all cherish so much, right? If you're in an instance, and this happened to me actually, where my players they arrived in town, and there's this ferryman who the town is split by a river, and the ferryman goes between the two sides of the town, and it's always the same guy who's running the ferry. And at one point, my players decided that they didn't trust this NPC. I don't know why. Like I didn't make it
some
so
classic
that
player shit right there.
Yeah. They were like, oh, he stumbled when he said this one thing about about the child who got kidnapped by the villain. He's got to be bad. And I'm like, okay, he's bad now. He wasn't before, but he's bad now. And I'm gonna take your inclinations and your suspicions, and I'm gonna make it line up. I'm going to make it line up in a way you didn't expect, so it's still fun and interesting for you. But when you find out, you're going to feel a payoff, and it's going to be really, really cool. So I know it's not really fudging dice because we're not rolling anything, but I just want to say, like, that narrative weaving is just an extraction of what dice fudging is, I think, personally. You know, when there's somebody behind a screen making decisions to try to facilitate a fun experience for the people at the table, saying dice fudging is bad because it's breaking the game, I think is maybe the wrong perspective to have. I think because you're trusting this person fully, right? And if you don't, I would ask you to maybe consider leaving your table and finding a game master that you do trust, because that's something that's super, super, super important. I don't know where I was going with this, but I guess my bottom line here is that players, you know, even if you find out that your game master is fudging dice, even if you find out that these things are happening, don't think you don't have an impact on the game, because the decisions and the things you say in the game should be taken into consideration by the person who's facilitating the game for you. And hopefully it comes up with like a big payoff and some cool dramatic moment.
I think so many DMs do that, and I think like it's one of those things where the common one is within comedy, and it's the one we tell players most about. The ones we don't tell you about are because that shit we're now gonna lock away and bring back and like utilize against you. But the ones we typically tell you about is when someone goes, oh yeah, I was just over there, and that building's a fucking shit show. You should see the people living in there. Whoa. And you're like, it's canon now. That building exists, and it's a shit show, and the people living in there are also a shit show. You've said it exists. And we typically, like, I often go, it's canon. I will actually say to my players, cool, that's canon now. Locked down. I'm writing a note right now that this place is called, you want to go to a food place and it's called Tina's Place. Cool, it's called Tina's Place, and I'm gonna tell you what Tina's Place is like when you get there, kind of thing. But one that, do you think Tracy's gonna watch this?
Tracy, skip ahead by 45 seconds because we're gonna spoil something for you.
Yeah, skip this. But I have one of my players in the actual play is currently chasing they're looking for someone who murdered their master. And they're looking to avenge their master. This is their personal plot. And they recently, in a recent episode, started believing that it was someone. There was for some reason something smelt weird to them, and they believe that it's this person. Their character then questioned an NPC about this person, and one of the traits that the person has that they know of is the man with the black hands. That his hands are like his skin pigment is off, like he has almost black frostbitey kind of hands.
Cool.
And they ask one of the NPCs, they're like, can you tell me about his hands quickly? I'm just wondering, does the man have anything weird about his hands? And in that moment, I was like, I can't I don't want to divulge too much, but just because also for viewers as well. But this person that she believes might be the man with the black hands, by her simply suggesting that he is, or questioning me, gave me the idea to be like, okay, maybe he is. You don't know this, and maybe he is. So now I'm going to tell you that the one thing that this NPC has noticed about his hands, that in the last 5 years, he started wearing gloves. That leaves this open now to, is he the guy with the black hands? Is he not? You have more investigation to do, but simply because you asked, I'm now gonna throw this at you, where you now have to go chase this person down because you asked about them. And so, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and I'd actually love to hear your perspective on this, Tom. But when something like that happens, when a player, have you done this? And if you have, I'd love to know how you feel when your game master, if they shut it down, or if they let you they lead you on to believe that what you're brainstorming in your brain is related. I think that there's something to be said about both of these things, but I'd love to know from your perspective, how would you feel if your game master enabled you in the thinking and this brainstorming that you're doing?
I'm all the way in, basically. So I've been taking this stance of sort of kicking the tires on DM's dice fudging, but as a player, I'm seeking, I'm thirsty, I'm starving for moments that if the DM has to fudge the dice to make those moments happen, I'm a dice fudging whore. So, I mean, it's true. I want, those moments where I feel like, oh, if I do this, if I lay this card down and I hit the dice right, I'm going to fucking slay the table. It's going to be perfect. And I hit it, the dice roll just doesn't do it. And it's hugely deflating, right? I know that it could have been a moment, everything's lining up perfectly. So if the DM just kind of slightly just adjust that a little bit to make it happen for me, I don't care. I just had the moment. So, although I've been kicking the tires as a player, whatever you can do to facilitate those moments, I'm in. How do you feel about us? How do you feel about the general fact that DMs across the board use our players' conspiracy theories to fuel our actual theories? How do you feel about that? Because that is a legit thing that all DMs do when someone's like,
I wonder if this, and this connect. We're like, damn, that's a fucking good thought. Fair game. You know what? They do connect now, and you'll find this out in a session or two, kind of thing. That's a very cool. How do you feel about that?
I'm all, I think storytelling has room for all of that. Again, experientially, however we get there, if the payoff is the payoff, then who cares? Do I feel a little bit dirty that I've been manipulated? Maybe afterwards, but during?
During, you feel great. It's like every manipulation ever. During, you're like, this is awesome, and then afterwards, you look back and you're like, oh shit. But do you know what? Go for it.
I was going to say, I think something that people tend to forget is that we're all playing this game kind of with like this suspension of disbelief, right? When you watch a movie, you're watching like a whodunit movie. The movie's way more fun if you don't actually critically analyze everything all the characters are doing and like spoil the mystery for yourself. It's more fun to be taken along for the ride. That's kind of what playing these tabletop role-playing games is, right? Like, yeah, you can have critical thought after the game is done, but let yourself be swept up in what's going on, have a good time, be the arbiter of your own fun. And by doing that as a player or game master, I can guarantee that at the very least, you'll start caring less about dice fudging. Maybe not eliminate it altogether, but you'll start caring a little bit less, I think.
And do you know what? It's a really good point. And I think, God, I want to agree so bad, but I'm such a like movie analyst where when movies happening, I'm like, did you see that there? He breathed like that person. He's the bad guy.
Here's the point.
I'm such a narcissist in that way, and I feel but I think it's a really good point. I do think it's a really good point.
It is a good point, but some directors, and let's now make the connection. Maybe some DMs take the piss. So taking the piss in the UK is take advantage of this power, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so they make huge assumptions that the audience will come along, and in doing so, they leave vast swaths of gapes in the plot that if you don't just put that aside, then it's gonna really screw up. Like
Christopher Nolan, we're looking at you.
But so here's the payoff. Those movies that you cherish most.
Are the ones you do suspend disbelief from?
Not only that, but they have the least amount of need to suspend disbelief. It all kind of fits in. There isn't any hole, or there aren't many holes that you can put your finger into and say, yeah, but they've done such a good job. And I would suggest DMs as well have done such a good job of balancing. Those high-level DMs have done such a good job of balancing that whatever the experience is, you're not doubting, you're not, you don't feel bad about, whatever happened, it was great. And you can walk away not feeling that you had to like suspend your belief, but feeling like it was fucking awesome the way it was rolled out.
And I think as well, actually, the bigger thing about that is there's a point where I think for me, like you as I just said, I'm a complete like analyze. Like I've loved movies since I was a child. Like it's been like my favorite genre of any medium of creation up until D&D. And whether it be TV shows or films or anime or whatever, I love like breaking down like, that the way they did that pan was done because like this, and the VFX that they used there, and like blah blah blah. And it's so weird because the movies that I truly love are exactly like you said, Matt. In the moment, I'm just like just getting hit by greatness. And then like afterwards, I sit and I'm like, oh, this was great. And like, this was cool. And like, analyze this and think about that. And I'm going to have to rewatch it so I can catch this and catch that. And I think, there's certain things in my life that have swept me up so hard that I'm never ashamed to admit this. How I Met Your Mother might be one of like my biggest ones. I fell in love with How I Met Your Mother when I was younger, and I've watched the whole thing 16 times now. I'm just finishing my 16th view through. And every time I watch it, I'm so encapsulated that there's new things that I notice because 16 times through, I'm starting to recite the lines back to the screen, and I'm now looking in the background and noticing things. My favorite episode in the world where, Marshall's dad dies and he finds out, I never noticed that there's a countdown. Every single shot in that movie has a number somewhere in the background that counts from 60 to 0 to the moment when he gets the information that his dad is dead. And that fucking blew my mind. Like that for, and that's on my 16th watch through. Like, I'm so encapsulated by this that even 16 times through, I didn't notice that because I'm just so engrossed in that emotional moment and the lead up to this big thing that I just didn't notice. I think if as a DM, you can draw your play, if they're frothing at the mouth to know, like, who the bad guy was, what they did, who this, what happened here, how has this gone on? Then it's actually easier for people to suspend that, that thought process, that analytics, I think, so much. I think that's what we strive for as DMs more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Matt, if you align with that.
Yeah. And I think if I can try to take it sort of distill it into something else, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bodhi, but I think part of it is consistency. If you're presenting the players with a world, with a universe that is consistent in its own rules, then people will not, for the most part, or at least my tables, have not started to question things. Even if it doesn't coincide with the rules of the real world, so long as I'm being true to the internal workings that they've been presented to so far, and I haven't been inconsistent in that way, then they're not going to break their suspension of disbelief. They're not going to get, their immersion is not going to be affected, and they're not going to be taken out of the game. And that's kind of where dice fudging comes into it, right? If a die roll happens, and first of all, it happens because I needed a die roll, right? There's some conversation that could be had about that, but I determined that we needed a die roll in this situation. And then I look at the outcomes, and I like the outcomes, we're going to go with it. We look at the outcomes, I don't like the outcomes, and narratively, it doesn't make sense, and it ruins the consistency of the world, then maybe I'm going to consider changing it. And that's all to help fabricate this immersion, this consistent universe, this consistent world, this consistent story. And I think that consistency is what's super duper important from our perspective. I mean, I'm saying a lot of things are important, but I think that's one of these things, that it helps us. Dice fudging helps us be consistent in kind of the space that we're telling. You're right though, Tom. Like, you don't want people to take advantage of this. You don't want a game master who's dice fudging all the time, just as you don't want a game master who's like overtly abusing their power as being the arbiter of this world. Like, these are things, these are two ends of the spectrum that I think in their like purest form, nobody really wants. Everybody wants something somewhere in there along the line. Maybe it's closer to always having die rolls exactly the way they are. Maybe it's closer to a purely narrative experience. And if that's the one you want, maybe D&D isn't the game for you, and you should explore other systems, because there are other systems that rely less on die rolls for this, the outcome of success, and have more player power and agency to like use resources to benefit yourself, kind of like inspiration. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole that I don't think we have time to go down. But yeah.
Well, do you know what? I think this is a perfect place to highlight, I think, the two words of today's podcast: consistency and balance. And who is more consistent and more balanced than this gentleman right here, with his incredible conversational abilities, passing it back and forth, asking great questions, giving us amazing input, hosting an amazing show. Damn, Matt, this has been more than a pleasure to be able to, discuss all of this with you, pick your mind. And I can tell that, we're going to be firm friends, and that we'll definitely have more conversations like this in the future, whether it be on camera or off camera.
Yes, please.
But dude, I just wanted to say, as one of the most consistent people and balanced people that we've spoken to, can you consistently and balanced give us your plugs and anything that you wanna shout out in your for yourself?
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and thank you for the compliment. I appreciate all the kind words, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the two of you again. I'm the host of Roleplay Chat. It's a bi-weekly tabletop RPG podcast. Every other week, I'm joined by a guest. Look forward to the episode with Tom and Bodhi on it. We pick a topic, we dissect it, and give advice on that topic to the folks listening, sharing stories, insights, tips, all that good stuff. I've had wonderful people join me. I've had Justin Keith from the Underground Oracle Group, Underground Oracle third party publishing company, I think is how they like to officially be referred to. I've had folks like Dave Tilstra from the Far podcast. I've had folks like Nick from the Scry Society. I've also been able to have the opportunity to meet some of my heroes. I got to talk to Brennan Lee Mulligan for about 2 hours for the show. I got to talk to Seth Skorkowski, as well as recently I talked to Scott, the Miniature Miniac, about mini painting. So these are all folks who have been important to me as I've navigated through the hobby. I shot my shot and they were kind enough to join me for a conversation. So yeah, all kinds of people join me on Roleplay Chat. Wherever you listen to podcasts, go give it a look. And on Twitter, you can also contact me there at roll_play_chat.
Kick ass. Guys, if you need some advice, if you need something to listen to, if you're looking for the next podcast, go check out Roleplaying Chat. It's a badass one, and one that you can learn loads from, and also, like Matt just said, experience voices and conversations from people that are incredible within our industry and pioneers of what we're doing in this world that we're this industry, and also like community that we're all growing together. So definitely go check that out. However, for us here at Homie and the Dude, we're a father and son TTRPG and MMA team. If you are interested in our content, you can find all of our video content on YouTube. Just search Homie and the Dude. Also, we're at Homie and the Dude on every social media platform. All of them. Every single one. I'm sure if you've got the social media, we're on there somewhere. I don't know. But we're there. And the other two things I'll quickly mention is we do have a Discord server. So if you are interested in seeing behind the scenes content from Homie and the Dude, asking Tom and I questions, or anyone else in our team questions about how we do what we do, or even just random shit about us, feel free to hop in there. Not to mention there's an MMA section of that Discord. So if you like fighting, if you like watching people beat the living lights out of each other, and you like talking about that, then that's a great place for you to come and do that as well. The final thing that I'll say is we do now have our newsletter of holding, which goes out once every 2 weeks. We give away free D&D supplements that we create with our writing partner, Tony. So go check that out. As well as that, you also get behind the scenes content. You get updates on our Airship Kickstarter. And the one that most people seem to love is you get free entry into every single family-made dice giveaway that we do, because we do make dice here as well, just because we don't have anything else on our fucking plate. So we're going to just do dice as well. But yes, if you would like to do that, it's completely free, and there will also be a link to that in the description. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you guys.
We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching Homie and the Dude today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit us with the Holy Trinity. Go follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and like the Facebook. It's the best way that you can help us out at the moment. Hope you have an awesome day. Thanks for watching, guys.